Hi, my name is Newell Davis with World Composting, and today we're going to have an update of our bin that has the hardwood pellets in it. I have been adding food to it, or I should say more coffee grounds, but I noticed that they're starting to crawl up the walls and everything, so I want to go through the bin, take a look, and kind of dig it up and see how it's going and see if the pellets are breaking down or if the worms are just ignoring them completely. So let's take a look and see how it's going. Alright, so here's our bin right here. Pull the top off. As you can see, there are worms up the sides here. I don't know if you can see it over here, but there are worms that are going up the sides, and there are worms on the lid. There's a little bit of moisture, but not too bad. I think at one point it was a little bit too moist, and I kind of dried it out a little bit by leaving the lid off. So here's the coffee grounds I've been throwing in. Some of them are kind of drying up, some of them are not. So let's just kind of dig down in here and see how things are going. So there's a whole bunch of worms, it looks like, in this sawdust area. This feels a little bit dry, and they're not really, it looks like they're not heading towards the bottom at all. So this is definitely dry down here. So we're going to have to, because this is sawdust, I might have to stir this bin up a little bit more than normal. Like it's drying out in the bottom here, actually. So I did bring my sprayer over here so we can kind of spray these down. So the top's dry, the top is too wet and the bottom is drying out, which is very unusual for most of the bins that I've ever had. Usually the bottom is overly moist and the top will dry out. So this is kind of an interesting experiment because I'm noticing that it's the opposite of what I normally have for my bins. There is no smell in this bin. I do have food ready to go in as well because I think that they might need some food other than here's a whole bunch of worms over here. One thing that is nice is that even though these pellets aren't fully broken apart, there's some worms over here. There's lots of worms in here I could see. When you spray them down, you can really see them start to move around. They look healthy and big. I mean, you know, these are, you know, not meant to be huge worms, but I mean, like they look healthy. They're nice, colored. They're not unhealthy in any way. It looks like they're just kind of dried out, maybe a little bit in this bottom section. So I'm going to add some water down here. Like here's it dried out again. So this is kind of interesting, as I said. You know, normally my bins run a little bit on the wet side, and this one's very, very dry, which might be why they're trying to get out. Might not be wet enough. So I'm going to spray this down. We're going to really mix this up too when I'm done to try to get it to let some of this moisture in. See, this right here in the center section, it's really dry as well. Now next time when I do this, I had somebody else mention this too, and I probably should have. I probably should have pre-soaked all these pellets and everything, really got them to break it down in a bucket before dumping them in, you know, and make sure that everything is broken down. You don't have any of these real pellet-looking material in here, which is what's sort of happening. And as they absorb more water, they're getting, you know, falling apart even more. But it's just the fact that it probably needed more moisture at the start. And you can tell that this is really drying out down here. So if you're going to do this for your beds, I highly recommend you soak these pellets first, get them all broken apart, make sure they're nice, flaky, fluffy material before you start throwing worms in here. So I've never worked with these before, so I have no idea because I don't buy these typically for my house. So I've never had them get wet before, but if somebody has a bag that goes bad and they get moldy, they get wet somehow and then they can't go in your fireplace, you know what to do. You can throw them in your worm bin. Just make sure that they got some moisture on them already. This is starting to slow down here, but you can tell me this is nice loose bedding material. It just needs some more moisture, but I'm going to mix this up. Now one thing I've never really checked before in my bins are temperature. And I might start doing that soon because I think actually that my basement runs a little bit colder than I thought. I was checking recently on one of my other bins, and it was the bin was in the 60s instead of, I thought it'd be in the 70s or 75 degrees. It was 65 or something like that. So they run a little bit colder than I was expecting here in the basement. So I might start doing that as well in some of these updates and start showing the temperatures and how they're doing. All right, this needs a couple more pumps here. So, but this is how the bin looks. I mean, as you can tell, this bedding material is just nice and fluffy, sort of like it would be for some of the other, like coconut coir and things like that. But it is a little bit dry. Just like coconut coir can have the same issue. I've found that a lot of the fibers that I use, they tend to dry out very quickly. when left with an open top, I mean, the entire thing will just dry out. So it does look like it's starting to get broken down a little bit more, although I have been throwing, as I said, a lot of coffee grounds, and they can kind of distort things a little bit since they're so brown themselves, and they're granular, you know, small pieces, small granules that kind of flow into everything. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to take this, I'm going to make a big hole in the center here, and I'm going to add a bunch of food in here. Now this is currently frozen, but it'll thaw out, I'm sure, pretty quickly. But I am going to add, I'm going to take out the lemons. I'm not going to add lemons to this bin right now. That would not be a good experiment for these, I feel. There we go. I'll take those lemon slices out. But this is carrot, banana peels, some celery, and in the bottom here is some mango. So we're going to add that to the center here. We're going to let them work on this for a while, and then we'll come back and check on them again. So I'm just going to put that in the middle. I'm going to actually spray this down with some water as well, because that's going to help thaw it out pretty quickly. And we're going to kind of cover this up just loosely. All right. Spray down the top a little bit more here and just make sure there's a little bit more moisture in this bin. As I said, it's been very interesting. The top has been moist, and I've actually been taking the top off at times to let some of the moisture out. And maybe I shouldn't have been doing that, or maybe I should have been stirring it up and getting some of the moisture down in here, in the bottom a little bit more. So that's my update for this week on this bin. It's been a couple weeks since my last update, so I haven't really turned it in a while. I've just sort of been letting it sit here and, you know, throwing in some more coffee grounds on top, which I will continue to do. So, actually, the top of this lid is already dried out from when I first took it off. Actually, I'm going to move some of these worms, I think, down into there, although they'll probably fall in when I put it back on. But it is looking pretty good, but we'll see how it continues. So that's my update for this week. Thank you very much. Please remember to subscribe and like my videos.